Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sherry.
And together we are
the Traveling Professors.
Today, Sherry and I are going to take you on a balloon flight over the town of Amboise in the Loire Valley. Now, we've taken a balloon trip before. We've taken one in Egypt at Luxor, and we've also taken one over the Loire at the Chaumont. We have flown over Chenonceau, but I'm going to show you that trip when we get ready to go to that chateau for its history. So today we're going to balloon over Amboise, and then the next show following it will be a tour of the magnificent castle. Whenever we go to the Loire Valley, we operate out of the little town known as Chaumont, and we actually stay at the balloon pilot's gîte, her rental. So we're going to be staying up here at Onzaine, and we're going to be ballooning over the fortress here at Amboise. And our launching point is going to be in this area right here. Now, of course, here's the little sign at Onzaine Chaumont, and here's the train station. It's about 3/4 of a mile from the train station to Lorenz's gîte. She always picks us up at the train station, but usually when we come to the Loire, because ballooning is dependent upon the weather, we usually have like a 4 or 5 day window. We usually have something planned to do between 9 and 3 o'clock, and then once we've had our balloon flight, then we can extend whatever we want to do. That right straight ahead is the little apartment that we're going to be staying in, and Lorenz's property is also right next door. So here's the interior. So here is the living room. We had great Wi-Fi. I wish I had that Wi-Fi here in Kansas City. And then there's the kitchen and the dining room. Of course, there's a supermarket about 1/4 of a mile away. Here's the main bedroom, and then there's a second floor where we have there's another set of bedrooms, so your family could come and stay here. Usually this costs us about 60 euros a night. If we stay a whole week, it's like 300 euros. It's really reasonable. And then this is the view out of the door, looking out on the little town and village of Onzaine, which has all sorts of things. We go down to the boulangerie and get the croissants and stuff in the morning. We usually get some food at the grocery store. They do have a couple of nice restaurants, and we've been here a couple of times. Actually, this is the 3rd time we've been there, and we actually know a few people. Here's a map of Amboise. Now we're going to launch from over here, and then we're going to go straight down the river this direction, and then we'll head off this way and see Mick Jagger's chateau, and then go out into the countryside and eventually land in a nice field. You can balloon from different directions. It depends upon which direction the wind is blowing. There was very little wind, so it was a nice, really slow ride. Lorenz is an excellent pilot. The other issue that you have at Amboise is that because it's relatively close to Tours, you have a military base there, and we have been here where they've done jet fighter flights down the river at low level. So there's a lot of coordination that has to go on. People used to launch from up in here, but that would mean the wind would have to be going this direction in order to get it to fly over just exactly right. So here we are. This is our view of the palace of Amboise and the town along with it from where we're going to launch from. And everybody is launching from this area. In the morning or in the evening when you go ballooning, you'll see people ballooning from Chenonceau. They would be back behind Amboise. There would be people at Chaumont, which would be up another direction. So you'll see balloons going up from different locations, and you can tell pretty much what they're going to be visiting. So here we are setting up. There's the basket. Now, we're not going in a group. When we fly with Lorenz, it's a private flight. So it's Sherry and I and her crewman who's down on the ground. It's a little more expensive. It's almost $700 for the two of us. That's not each. That's for the both of us to do the 1 hour and 15-minute flight. If we were doing it with a group, and they do groups, it's about $168 per person. And we have taken a group flight when we were in Egypt, and that was fine. I thought the basket would be just like one big basket, and it's partitioned, so everybody has their little space. But we just like going up with Lorenz. So here's the basket. You can see the trailer here with the big ball, which is the bag that holds the balloon. So then it's stretched out, they begin to attach it, and then they have the little fan that starts blowing it up. So at which point we get to help hold it down. And here's some of the other crew, some of the other ships. Anything that's a bug-like balloon is her company. Actually, her company makes most of the balloons, and they also do all the repairs all over France as well. And then after it's blown up a little bit, she had us get inside to get a nice little picture. We're in their new balloon. This was the 500th anniversary of the Renaissance in the region, and so she has the anniversary balloon. This is the one that we usually go up in. We usually go up with one of the ladybug, which is the emblem of the company. And so here the balloon is getting a little more full, just about ready to step in. So we've been given the instructions. We're pretty good at getting into these things nowadays. So we're inside, and we've just barely off the ground at this point. You can see the contrails from the jet planes, and there's one of the other balloons going up. And then pretty quickly, we gain altitude, and we go over the levee, heading towards the city of Amboise. Now, I have a 48-second video from about right here as we head towards the city and the chateau. And I'm just going to let it run. There's a little sound on it. You'll hear some hissing, and that is the balloon being inflated a little bit more. There's a little motor in there that makes a little noise, and there's a little bit of conversation. I'm going to let that go, and then we'll pick up afterwards.
This is just heaven.
Maybe a little noisy because of the traffic. Noisy, yes. The car on the road and the sound
Comes
comes
up.
up. Yeah.
I love the morning we flew and we could hear all of the roosters crow and the people go out and start taking care of their animals. That was so cool.
In ancient times, there were only a few places where you could cross the Loire by bridge, and this is one of them. This is a Roman-constructed bridge that's been reinforced and upgraded over the years. And the island is an important place, too, because it used to be the demarcation line between the Frankish Empire and the Visigoths of Spain. Then as we fly closer, there's the chateau. And when I do the history of the chateau, you'll find that there's only about a third of the original chateau there. In the 1800s, they demolished a large part of the buildings for another project that was never done. But originally, this site was inhabited back into the Iron Age, and this held this region. And then when the Romans came in, Julius Caesar saw it as a spectacular location, and it became known as Caesar's Granary. This was a major headquarters for Caesar's logistics in his conquest of Gaul. And then it becomes, part of the Roman Empire, and then the Frankish Empire, and so forth and so on. And ultimately, when you get to the Renaissance period, Charles VIII on up into Francis I and Henry II. But if you look away from the chateau, you can see the other part of the town. And the church you see here is one of the oldest churches in the region. Only St. Martin of Tours is really older than this. That is not the new church, but the old monster church that used to be there. We've actually attended services there and arrived on a Sunday, which was First Communion, which was very, very, very touching. Here we are a little closer. Now, Lorenz could take the balloon up and down depending on what you want to do. Sometimes we'll see people who will come in and get really low. When we flew over Chenonceau, one of the balloons ahead of us got almost down to the ground, which is really, you're not supposed to do that. It's kind of irritating because we had to wait a while for them to get out of the way so I could get some good pictures. So we usually go up about this height to get these good aerial pictures and then go down as we go along. Then here's the rest of the island. They have turned this into football fields, tennis courts. There's a walking trail. You can go all the way around the island, and they used to have some equipment that you could work out on. And you may see a gold balloon in some of these pictures, a solid gold balloon that's actually owned by a private individual who flies it just on her own. And here we are right in front of the chateau, and you can see the old defensive walls over here, modern defensive walls, palace area. And then back over in this region is Clos-Lucé, which is where Leonardo da Vinci lived. And when he lived here, there was actually a tunnel that allowed people to come from the chateau to Clos-Lucé, which is where the king's wife lived, and back to the castle. But that entrance has long since been closed up because the building that it came up in no longer exists. So here we are going upstream here, heading towards, actually, Chaumont. And then looking back as we go by, we've gotten down a little lower, get a little shot here. And then looking back behind, there's the beautiful view of the Loire with the bridge going across it and one of the other balloons. As we're floating over the island, I pointed out to Laurence this little church towards the middle of the island. It's the Church of Saint-Jean. So she got down a little bit closer so I could get this picture. Now the interesting thing about this, I mentioned at the beginning that the Loire River was the dividing line between the Visigothic Spanish and the Frankish kingdom. Well, on the site where this church is located is where the negotiations between the two monarchs. Now, the Visigoths had an elective kingship, and of course the Franks, after Clovis, were unified under a king. And I believe it's Clovis. It's not Charlemagne because that is not Visigothic at that time. At Charlemagne's time, it's Muslim. So it's one of the early Frankish kings that negotiated this boundary line. And then later this chapel was built on the site. And we've seen it before. So here's a little sign. It says République Française, the village of Amboise, the chapel of Saint-Jean. Well, it's been decommissioned. Anytime you have a church that's not in use, they become decommissioned and become part of building that the public of the city can use. And they kept it because of its historical background. And here it is on the ground. It was originally Romanesque. It's still Romanesque from its look. And it's just a chapel. They've turned it into a kind of a place where you have art exhibits and what have you. And in the interior, this is looking from the entrance of the church to where the altar would have been located. And then this is looking from the altar back. And you can see, even with the electric light, it's still relatively dark. And here's the outside, and you can still see some of the original foundation that was here. So it's a really interesting little item. Well, we're coming to the end of the island, and there's another more modern bridge that's been put into place. Here we have a few of the balloons that have been launched not only from our area, but probably over at Chaumont up in the air. And then we kind of turn a little bit to our left and go over this chateau here. This is owned by Mick Jagger. Laurence said that whenever people go ballooning, the family lets people know when there's people staying. If there are people staying there, that no one goes around it. Then turning back, here's about as high as we got, and it's a total shot of the island with the town of Amboise, with the chateau and the bridges looking back. We didn't really cover a lot of distance because it was a really light day, but that's great. That's exactly what Sherry and I wanted, to get a good view of this area. Meanwhile, her crew, her one gentleman, is following us and keeping track of us. So as we're looking for a place to land, there he is at the intersection. Obviously you don't want to land in somebody's vineyard, so there's plenty of places to come down and land. And so she selected a spot which is a grassy area. And there's the golden balloon with the lady who does her own ballooning, and one would assume she has her own crew as well. And you can see our balloon with the shadow. Again, it wasn't very windy, so it was real easy landing. And now we have to put everything away. So here comes the vehicle with the trailer. So Laurence is unsnapping everything. Then everything is, they take the balloon and stretch it out, and then you begin wadding it up. And this is the most amazing part, that this balloon fits into this little sack. We roll it in, and then you put the basket in. And then they rolled it up, sat on it, this Laurence and her crew, and then they're working on the basket. And then they take a picture of Sherry and I on the basket. And then here's the Montgolfiers, the company that they work for. And then this is actually a picture of Sherry and I when we took our first balloon flight with Laurence. So we have our certificates. We now have a second certificate from her. We have a certificate from the pilot at Luxor. And actually this is will be our third trip. We have another one from Chenonceau. That's our ballooning over the Loire and the town and chateau of Amboise. Sherry and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyaccordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.